Catrien Bijleveld. I'm affiliated to NSCR Institute in Amsterdam as well as to the Vrije Universiteit. And today I'm going to interview Jan van Dijk, who is currently also affiliated to NSCR, but who was affiliated to a large number of other institutes, which we're going to talk about.
Okay.
So Jan, very nice and a bit of an honor to be interviewing you.
Same to me.
Thank you.
To be interviewed by you.
Thank you. You have been retired for a while already, even though you're still very active. But anyway, you have witnessed sort of the development of criminology over a long stretch of time. Can you tell me something about first your career, how you started, how you ended up in criminology, and then maybe a little bit on how you perceive how criminology was when you started? Probably somewhere in the 70s, I guess?
Early 70s, yes,
okay.
Certainly. Well, I started as a law student at Leiden University, conservative law faculty, and I did reasonably well, I can say, but I was totally bored by jurisprudence. I thought this is always about other people's money, and this is not going to be my profession, to quarrel about other people's money issues. And I also felt that all this normative reasoning about criminals and fraudulent people was very interesting, but that doesn't necessarily change the problems that they are making or having. So I became very much interested in empirical research, psychology, sociology, even behavioral biology was an interest, an early love of mine. So I felt I have to break out of this law faculty, and criminology at that time was the only way out. So then I decided to do my thesis for the professor of criminology at Leiden, a fairly well-known person, Willem Nagel. And then that was maybe my luck. He was also one of the international pioneers of victimology. So already as a student I was exposed to this idea that there are two sides to a crime and that the victim is not necessarily less interesting than the perpetrator. So I wrote to an ad for a lecturer at the university in the south of the Netherlands, and I was recruited. It was a Catholic university. They found out that I was not a Catholic. So they reopened the vacancy. I'm just giving you a little bit of color. Early 70s, when you could still do these things.
This
and
is
they
Tilburg
said,
University?
no, this was Nijmegen University.
Oh, Nijmegen.
And the ad was, if the candidates are equally competent, we would prefer to take the Catholic. And my professor, Professor Dessauer, who was also a famous novelist in the Netherlands, the first lesbian novelist in Holland. She said, "Jan, no worries, there are no Catholics that are as competent as you are. I will make sure that that is the verdict." So it was a half a year of uncertainty and resentment, I must say, but then I was finally recruited and I started to do empirical research, which was my great love already at that time. So this is how it started.
Yeah, so you started out in Nijmegen and immediately already the sort of the victim side of crime and criminology grabbed you in a sense.
Yes, I was prepared for that by Willem Nagel.
Yeah.
I was actually asked to follow up on a study, an ongoing study at Nijmegen, where they analyzed court files and they wanted to know what kind of interesting information there is about the victims in the court files. There wasn't any. There wasn't hardly any mention of the victim. So I felt, well, this is not going to work. I have to find another approach. And then I decided to interview about 200 recent victims of violence who I picked up at the police station. Data protection didn't exist in the early 70s.
Wonderful.
Yes, I just got the address from the police and I rang the bell. And I found out that they were very keen to talk. And that was an eye-opener for me. They had lots to say. Not necessarily only complaining, but they wanted to talk about what had happened to them. Yeah. Well, no one had even thought about victim support at that time. It was completely non-existent. In 72, 73. Right. This was. But for me, that was really an eye-opener, and I also continued to think about what could be the role of the victim. Certainly they should be treated better by the police, but also maybe by the court system. And that became my fascination during my career.
Yeah, and that is something that you've been active in very much recently. But in the meantime, you're also known for someone to be at the start of a lot of victim surveys in the Netherlands, right? So more like the instrumental side, where you interview victims to find out what crime levels are in the country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is a tenuous relationship in the US between criminologists who are interested in victim issues and the first victimization surveys. But apart from that, you are totally right that the victim was an instrument to better understand the levels of crime in order to have a measure superior to police-recorded crime. That was the driver.
And what year are we talking about now?
This is 74. 74.
Yeah.
I just came from Nijmegen to the research center at the Ministry of Justice, and my first major task became the launch of a victimization.
So this is 50 years ago.
That's how old I am. But what I find interesting is that because I was a criminologist, and in the US, the people who were running the first surveys were political scientists or statisticians, but there was no criminological input. And we, of course, were immediately also very interested in how does the victim respond? Do they go to police, and if not, why not? These questions have always been also in the Dutch victimization survey.
Yeah, because the first one was launched around that time, right? 73, 74.
73, 74. The pilot test 73 and a more or less full-fledged national survey 74. So the Americans were 2 or 3 years ahead of us.
Okay.
But our focus was broader.
Okay.
And this is also at the root of the International Crime Survey, which I launched around 1990.
The ICVS, the International Crime Victimization.
Because the ICVS is very clearly modeled after the Dutch survey and the British and the Swiss, but they're also clones of the Dutch survey. The British colleagues have great trouble acknowledging that. But,
but actually you're saying that the Dutch were the first.
Without any doubt in Europe,
yes.
They just pasted our questionnaire. Now, what is interesting is, and I think still important, is that the ICVS has this broader scope. So it has questions on fear of crime, but also on what would be the appropriate punishment for a burglar. So these are victimological issues. You will never find them in the American National Crime Victim Survey.
Because these were much more instrumental, and the Dutch
and they still is. They
broader.
Want to have a better measure of the level of crime, and that's maybe also their strength, that they have this single-mindedness. This is what we're doing.
Narrow focus.
And we also have therefore added more modules. I must say also like the British survey, they have also started with adding new modules. You will find much less of that in the American.
Perception of the police, all these things were added over the years.
Yes, and nowadays also already in the ICVS, we have this question, did you receive specialized support? Which is of course an extremely important dimension of victimization survey, and for the future I sometimes even feel that we could maybe reframe the victimization survey. It's not about what you have experienced, but also how you responded to that experience.
Right.
That will make the utility of the survey much larger.
I will return to this in a bit. So at this time you were working at WODC, which was the research department of the Netherlands Ministry of Justice, right? And you were also its head for a while.
Yeah, for quite a while. Almost 10 years.
So what years are we talking about then?
I became, I think, a director around the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. I was the director.
Yes. Okay. And you were then very much into criminology. You were doing sort of legal, more policy research, but you yourself, you consider yourself a criminologist predominantly.
Absolutely, yes.
If you look at the way criminology was then, the sort of the atmosphere, the focus, I mean, there wasn't a lot European going on. I think most people then traveled to the American conferences. And you know, all these European scholars, they met each other in the US.
Yeah.
But I mean, was it? I mean, it was the roaring 60s were behind us. But I mean, what was the atmosphere? What was the attitude of criminologists?
I think if you want to understand European criminology, you cannot ignore the havoc of the fascist era. Many criminologists were totally on the wrong side, political side during the war. So in post-war Europe, criminology was suspect. Certainly in Italy and in Germany, the older professors had collaborated with fascist regimes. So the discipline in the 50s was in disarray. And that is also, I think, why there was quite understandably an enormous interest also among my generation in the abuses of the criminal justice system. There was a general feeling in Europe, more than in the US, that the real topic of a criminologist is not what so-called criminals have done wrong, but what the police and the prosecutors are doing wrong. Be discriminative, oppressive. These were the topics. It was a little bit suspicious if you wanted to study crime. Now that changed, I think, very interestingly first in the UK, when some of the more critical criminologists felt, yes, but we must be realists. Crime is also a problem. It hurts vulnerable people. We cannot ignore that. And then there was a new school of new left realism. And I felt immediately a soul brother of these people who called themselves the new left realists.
Feet on the ground.
And they were also the ones who started victimization surveys. So these were my partners.
And of course, crime started rising at some point.
And exactly in those years, crime became a real problem for ordinary people. So that was why there was also an alliance a little bit between the Netherlands and British criminologists of my generation. And I must say, we also had an exchange program with the research and planning unit of the Home Office in London. Every year we organized a conference. In a way that predates the European Society. Because then we also invited the Max Planck Institute and the Philippe Robert group, CESVIP. That was basically the origins of what later became the European Society. So there was already an exchange.
So you're talking about a movement from right after the war that was extremely critical towards the state.
Yes, exclusively.
And I sort of gather from what you say, not too much focused on data.
No, very theoretical and critical.
Exactly. And then moving towards, getting the data, victimization studies, because the police data are no good understanding what's happening, etc.
So left realism is a very nice label for me. I wouldn't necessarily present myself as very much to left, but that idea, we want to solve problems, to solve social problems, but we also want to do empirical research, and we certainly want to know about victims of crime. So that was indeed, in a nutshell, our self-perception.
Jan, these victimization surveys, they have been running in the Netherlands for a very, very long time. Many more European countries have started also conducting their own surveys. There's the ICVS, but I think in recent years it has sort of, petered out a little bit, in the sense that more and more countries are sort of also deserting the victim surveys.
Exactly, yes.
Why is this happening, do you think?
I think the primary reason is a very simple one, is that crime is no longer so much of a political priority as it was in 20 years ago. Crime has gone down, partly because of evidence-based crime prevention policies and evidence-based policing, contributions of criminology. So in a way we have ruined our own field by being successful advisors of the government. And now crime is no longer such an urgent concern. It's coming back now in the US. Let's see what happens in Europe. But I think in the upcoming elections in the USA, safety, crime will again be a major issue. And at the moment people feel, well, these surveys are very expensive, and we aren't. Not really. No. But there's also the feeling we know that crime goes down anyway. I mean, we don't need surveys. But what is of course absolutely untrue, because no one knows what's going on in the cyberspace. Maybe crime is not going down at all. In fact, there are indications from the British survey and the Dutch survey that the rise in cybercrime is as big as the drop in offline crime. So it's more a substitution than that there is a general thing. But we don't know. And Brussels has no clue, because the only crime data that Brussels publishes, and this is really shameful, Eurostat still publishes police recorded crime, and then you always see that there is most crime in Sweden, in Denmark, in the UK and in the Netherlands, and there is hardly any crime in Eastern Europe. And this is of course because people don't go to the police in these countries. This will take another generation before they have...
I think for a while this was a hypothesis, that cybercrime was simply the substitution of the crime drop, but I think it has now indeed been confirmed that this happened indeed, and also that fear of crime, that people's biggest fear of crime is now the biggest fear is cybercrime.
Yeah, no, certainly also during the Corona period. Fraud on the internet has skyrocketed. For sure. But we don't measure it, so we don't really know. Which also means Brussels is in no position to introduce new policies, because this would be policies about the phenomenon that they do not know.
So this is a clear dark number, or dark patch, you could say. And now
a real dark number.
Exactly. And now you just mentioned the Eastern European countries. What I presume, but I don't know what you know about that in the communist era, these countries were pretty safe. I mean, depending on how you define it, but that crime, public crime, has actually risen since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Are there any good data on Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe? I mean, how does that look? How does that picture look?
Well, that is also a very sorry state of affairs. The ICVS has been carried out in some countries. The Bulgarians have continued to do it. I don't know exactly why, but they have an ongoing national survey. But that's about the only one. And Estonia has repeated it a few times. No, it's a desert in terms of crime information. We don't know. You have the police statistics that are totally unreliable in these countries. And well, we know, for instance, from Eastern Germany, that some studies have been done that after the fall of the wall, indeed, crime has gone up. That has been well documented. But for the rest, it's hard to say what's going on there.
Does that mean that we're coming full circle in terms of data? That there were very few data right after the war, and now data are becoming scarcer and scarcer because we're not measuring the new phenomena. We're not measuring the new countries that have been added to the EU. But empirical criminology in that respect is still very underdeveloped in those countries. And the crazy thing is, I have a little bit of historical interest. So I have studied some documents about the discussions in the International Society of Criminology about crime statistics. There was a movement in the 20s, early 30s to improve crime statistics. Of the last century? So 1920, 1930.
Yes, they had several conferences. And you know who were the main speakers? Romanian and Polish professors.
Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Well, it's history.
So we're talking like between the two world wars?
Yeah, exactly. There was an enthusiasm to to standardize, to harmonize the European crime statistics. Well, no one was talking about American statistics. Europe was the center of the academic world. So the Europeans were hammering on the need to have harmonized statistics, and the Eastern Europeans were at the foreground of that movement. And if you now look back at...
In terms of activism, or also in terms of...
No, papers. The main papers and the main speakers on these congresses were from Eastern European countries. There was a great...
They were the leaders. They were the intellectual leaders.
I think so, yes. Okay. Maybe the Brits were also there because they have a long established tradition of state statistics. Maybe the French also, but certainly in the forefront there were also Romanians and Polish,
and Polish researchers.
Scholars. Yes, very interesting. Sad to see how such a tradition has completely vanished because of the fascist and communist era. They have, if anyone needs a renaissance of European criminology, it's these countries. It's also another fascinating aspect is that if you look at the bachelor programs in criminology, it's very focused. It's in the UK, it's in Belgium, and it's in the Netherlands, and a little bit in Switzerland. There are thousands of students who do a bachelor in criminology. To my knowledge, there aren't any in Germany or in France. You can do a master, but then you are already highly specialized.
You're already a lawyer, so to speak.
A lawyer,
so
and
it's
then
on
you
top
do a
of
master.
a law degree. Yeah.
But this tradition that we now have in Northwestern Europe, that you do a bachelor and then you do a master and then a PhD, is still very concentrated in Northwestern Europe. Why? It's a fascinating topic. Yeah.
So what do you think could be done to improve this situation?
Well, I have always been interested in also being practical and not too philosophical. I think it would already be a start if we had more truly European textbooks. Because if you now want to teach criminology, you do it in your own language, or you have to use an English textbook, which usually has a very strong UK focus. Or you opt for an American, but then it's completely American criminology, which is not the same as the European criminology.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Why is American criminology different from European?
Well, what we found when we started to go to the US, there was an enormous focus on violence. Gun violence is still a major issue. Sure. Till this very day, lots of papers on gun violence. In the Netherlands, we have a colleague who is a specialist on homicides. I was with her in an international conference in Latin America, and then she said, "Well, I'm the homicide professor," and then they asked, "How many homicides do you have in your country?" And she said, "About 100." And the whole hall started to laugh because in a little village in Latin America you have 100 homicides over the weekend, so almost.
Wow, that's exaggerating a bit.
No, but they have it. It's incomparable. The violence problem also in the US, but also in Mexico.
But the gun issue
and the discrimination of the racial issue.
Black America.
The studies of that the capital punishment is much more often imposed on black people or on minorities. Now these are also issues in Europe, of course.
Discrimination,
certainly, but not. This is not a central issue, I think, for us. So there are differences.
So the issues are different, is what you're saying.
The issues are different, and we also, fortunately, I think, are a little bit closer to policy making.
Okay.
Certainly in the Netherlands, in the UK, also in France and in Belgium, it's normal for a Minister of Justice or Interior to consult a criminological expert when there is an issue.
Right.
This is not often done in the US.
Okay, so I asked you, what could be done to improve the situation? And you said, well, the first one is European textbooks.
That's a very practical thing, but
Are there other things that you think should be done?
I'm very, very disappointed about the role of the European Commission so far. We went to Strasbourg every year. That's where I met my European colleagues in the 80s, because there was every year a big conference organized and funded by the Council of Europe. Well, that has petered out, and we all felt this will be taken over by the Commission, where they have 100 times more money. Yeah. That has never happened, because of the fights about whether the Commission has a mandate on crime. They have a mandate on cross-border crime. That is already a big mandate, but they haven't really. Well,
they have a mandate on national crime.
That they have never had, but I mean, what should prevent them? Also on human trafficking, their role has been very disappointing.
Okay.
There are directives on victim rights, on human trafficking, on terrorism, but there is no follow-up in the sense that they understand that the European Society of Criminology is an important source of information for them and inspiration. Yeah. I don't think there is much of a connection between the society and the officials in Brussels. Right. Occasionally a person pops up and then you have a coffee with him, but there is no structural relationship, which is sad and most unfortunate. And well, it is not only up to the society, it must come from both sides. I hope that one day politicians in Brussels say, well, this is not normal. Why is there no contact with crime is an issue in Europe, cybercrime is. Why is there no criminologically informed policy?
Well, and I mean, you said that there's simply no data. You know, there's fewer data. We have this big dark number, you know, when you talk about cybercrime. We have victim directives. So why is there not a European crime victimization survey? Somebody else has also sometimes talked about that, that's me, but I guess it must be something that's close to your heart too.
It's a mystery to me. I remember at one point there was an interest to start a European crime victim survey. Would have been fantastic for the East European countries that never had any surveys.
And some southern.
And then there was a British member of the European Parliament who stood up and he said, no, we don't need that because we have the British crime survey. As if that was an argument not to have a European survey. And then it was over. And this is now 15 years ago. And there has not been any new...
15 years ago, 15.
15 years ago. And no one has raised it again. And it seems to be very difficult to reopen such an issue. It was vetoed by the Parliament, but it's now 15 years ago, and cybercrime is now a big issue. The Victims' Rights Directive is politically important. So don't ask me. For me, it's a mystery. It's a sad mystery, and I have no signs that anything is going to happen. So it should be some young politicians who start raising this issue in Parliament.
So we're now talking about the Commission, about the European Union, but of course the society has sort of a broader region that is considered part or sort of relevant for the society. So that is the Council of Europe countries, and I know that you're still quite active. I know that you were recently working on a victim survey, I think in Georgia.
Among others, yes, but also Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan.
Those are, I don't think, part of the Council of Europe, but let's talk about Georgia. I mean, what did you do there and what did you find?
Well, this is a bit sensitive. I did a survey already 5 times in Georgia, and under the Saakashvili years, crime dropped like a rock because of partly because of an oppressive regime. But crime went down according to my surveys, and so I was quite popular in Georgia.
You were repeating the same
surveys? Yes, I have done it
so
exactly the same 5 times now. But they did it again 2 years ago with this new regime, and as you could expect, probably, crime has gone up a little bit, and corruption has also gone up a little bit, which is maybe to be expected, because under Saakashvili these things were. I mean, you went to prison for 30 years if you stole a penny from the state. This was really harsh. Now that is no longer the case, and of course it went up a little bit, but they couldn't accept that. So it was never officially published by the. It was funded by the European Commission, but they didn't. By the Commission. Yeah. Okay. But they didn't want to put a label on the report, so I had to publish it on my own website, on the ICVS website. So if you want to know what's going on with crime in Georgia, you have to go to my website. That's the only place where you can find it. And I really felt unwelcome in Georgia.
And so you will not get another invitation?
We are talking. Okay. Because they are ambivalent, we all know that, but the official line is still that they want to join the European Union.
Absolutely.
And that is also a little bit funny, that if you want to join the European Union, one of the requirements is that you do a victimization survey. But they don't do it in their own union. So all these surveys that I did, I mentioned Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, Georgia, it's all funded by the European Commission. And it's part of the acquis, so to speak.
Funny.
Yeah, so they put pressure on these poor Georgians who don't want a survey, but they don't do it in their own union. Yeah. Okay, I find it interesting to do the survey there. Yeah. And we could show that indeed it was going up a little bit, not drastically. I mean, I'm not want to dramatize, but under Saakashvili there was hardly any crime left. It was unbelievable. Yeah. It came from there, it went to here, and now it went a little bit up. Yeah. But this was politically so sensitive that they have tried everything to rubbish our methodology, and eventually I published it on my own website.
So you talked a little bit before about the role of the society, the European Society of Criminology. You say that there should be more contact. It should come from both sides. Are there other roles that you see for this society in furthering the future of criminology in Europe?
Well, maybe. I mentioned this textbook because, as you know, I have a textbook in Dutch. I have sometimes considered why not invite some colleagues and make a real, truly European textbook. That could also be promoted by the society, and I think you could discuss the curriculum for a European bachelor or a European master. What should be in such a course? That could also be a role of the society. We meet and we present our papers, but we could also give a boost to basic education in criminology. Maybe also with funding from the Commission, because they fund all kinds of educational projects. So a European bachelor in criminology would be a good idea. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. I mean, even in Belgium they say we cannot use Jan's book because it's too Dutch, although it's the same language. But culturally there are apparently so many subtle differences. And basically, of course, our textbook is Dutch. I mean, it's about the statistics are to a large extent Dutch. But that could easily be adapted.
But then if you write a textbook, you don't have the victimization statistics for Europe.
No, I have a little bit from Gallup, as you know. From Gallup I have these two items.
Okay.
There is one item on have you been a victim of theft, and there is one have you been mugged or assaulted. And that is done every year. This is a sample of 1,000, the Gallup World Poll. Yeah. It's also done in Europe. And tomorrow I will present the latest statistics from 2020 and 2021, which show that the corona lockdowns have had a little bit of impact, but much less than that you would think when you study the police recorded crime, because obviously the lockdown has also prevented reporting and recording and detecting. So if you look at the police statistics, crime went down by 40% or so, I think. But according to my survey, it's tiny and not even universal.
But some types of crime will have gone down, like
theft,
because many people were at home.
Theft in particular.
Theft in particular went down.
That includes burglary in the Gallup.
Okay.
It's a very wide.
Okay. But I mean, you're going to talk about this at this conference. Huh? We're now in Florence, but when this will be posted on YouTube, the conference will be over. So maybe you can tell the viewers a little bit about your findings, your pan-European findings that you're going to be talking about tomorrow.
Yes, well, I looked at the 2 years before the lockdown and the 2 years after the lockdown for all European countries. So I have two samples of 2000 in these periods, and I think of the 30 European countries we have, in about 20, crime went indeed down, theft went down. There is no impact on mugging and assault. That was stable, but theft went a little bit down. But if you look at my older stats from years before, the crime drop had already commenced.
Had already
15 years ago, and actually it is almost at the end. According to my, there was still a little drop during the corona, but I sense that after this it will be stable or will go up again.
Yeah, but you're not capturing cybercrime in the Gallup.
Not at all. No.
So that might also be something for the European society to maybe
promote
push a little bit, or promote, or develop specific instruments for.
What is also interesting, that I prepared my paper for tomorrow here, that I once again looked at the level of crime, and I found that very consistently, France, Belgium and Italy are in the top 5 for theft in all these years. Okay. So that is really a robust finding. I mean, that's
how many years are we talking about then?
I have data now for more than 15 years.
15 years.
15 years.
15, 1-5.
Yeah, almost 20.
Yeah.
And consistently, France, Belgium, and Italy are in the top. I mean, it's not that they are here and the rest is there, but they are consistently a bit higher than Germany, the UK, or the Netherlands, which is interesting. There must be social reasons for that. So that would be another reason why you say we need a survey. These things should be studied. How can you conduct policy if you don't know which countries suffer most from crime? That should be studied, and it can only be studied if you can measure the dependent variable.
Yeah, and if you do it consistently the same way over all those countries, so you need one survey to measure the same phenomenon over all those countries, right?
Yes, and this Gallup survey is extremely limited.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I would never design a survey like that, but this is the only thing available, and I'm very grateful that they give me access to it.
Yeah.
But of course, this is only a reason to do a full-fledged, serious survey for a few million. We can do it, and this for an issue that is so important to many people and to citizens,
and so costly.
And also, the impact of crime is enormous. Yes, that's absolutely the case. So wonders. What's going on in Europe?
Okay, I'm sort of out of my question, but I don't know. Is there anything I didn't ask you, Jan, that I should have asked you?
If you say, if we talk about my career, then I think what should also maybe be stressed is that I have never been a pure researcher, but I have also been a little bit of an activist.
Okay.
So I think the clearest example is that in 1985 I became the first president of the Dutch organization for victim support, which is not so normal for an academic to set up a new organization, which is now a very successful and efficient, well-run society. And I still feel that if you want to be a criminologist, you should have a little bit of interest in the impact of crime. Yeah, on the impact of crime on the citizens. And if you can make a difference, please do. I mean, this is your field, and if you have the knowledge, I think it is also your responsibility to use that knowledge and to make things better. So certainly in my lifetime, I have tried to combine doing research with spending time on raising money for organizations like the Victim Support Organization in the Netherlands. And I hope that also the younger generation, I think they have of course their own topics, they have feminist activities, that is of course also extremely important. And I hope that will continue to be part of the tradition of European criminology, that it's not just l'art pour l'art.
Studying data behind your desk, but actually...
And giving a paper at the ESC, you should also, when you go home, do something about these issues. Yes, that's my wish for the future.
I think that is a beautiful end.